Hello and welcome to the Gentleman Voice Book Review. I am the Gentleman, and today we are looking at Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. Of Mice and Men is a very nice and short novella. It's about George and Lenny. Lenny is the character who's not too bright, but is able to follow along with George because George lets him come along. George is the cleverer person, and this is at the time of the Great Depression. There's Dust Bowl going on in Oklahoma area, and they are trying to find work just about anywhere they can. And I think they're in California in the novel, but they don't really say. So they work their way around from job to job, and actually, from what we can gather from the first few scenes, they have to leave very quickly almost all the time. And actually, it's because something terrible has happened, and it seems to happen a lot. And George gives us a hint about that because of how many times he says he has to help and save Lenny from all this trouble. And Lenny, he doesn't know any better. You really feel sorry for the guy. But most of the novel is about how they are working on this I think it's a barley place. It was really a short section that I can't really remember, but they're throwing barley around, I think. That's all I can remember. Actually, from the main strength that comes in a John Steinbeck novel are the characters. The characters are usually very driving and very interesting. We've got George, who's, as I said before, is a clever person. We've got Lenny, who's the inarticulate guy with the heart of gold, but gets everyone into trouble. And then we've got Slim, Crooks, and a whole bunch of others. Curly. Curly's the other troublemaker because he's the macho man, thinks he's in charge of everything. But unfortunately, now the novel's not quite as poignant as it most likely was then, because the novel focuses on these two people trying to get work, and while I will say that getting work is not exactly easier now than it was then, it's not quite the same situation. But the novel itself, I've actually read it twice now. This is my second time reading it. The first time was about 4 or 5 years ago, and I loved it. I thought it was one of the best books ever written. Now, I think it's partly because I know what's happening, I know what's going to go on, that I know that it's just not quite as effective anymore. But back then, it was probably really, really well done. In fact, John Steinbeck, I think, won awards for it, but I can't recall. But he himself won the Nobel Prize, so there goes without saying. But back to Of Mice and Men. I can't really go into too many details because the novel is so short. It's only 118 pages. It's a really light read. But there's this one really good passage that sums up the whole story, essentially. It's said by Crooks, who is the black worker who has a crooked back, which is why he's named Crooks. But he's got this really great line, which I'm just going to read out here. It's actually there. Giveaway quote. Crooks said gently, "Maybe you can see now. You got George. You know he's going to come back. Suppose you didn't have nobody. Suppose you couldn't go into the bunkhouse and play rummy because you was black. How'd you like that? Suppose you had to sit out here and read books. Sure, you could play horseshoes till it got dark, but then you got to read books. Books ain't no good. A guy needs somebody to be near him." He whined, "A guy needs nuts. Goes nuts if he ain't got nobody. Don't make no difference who the guy is, as long as he's with you. I tell you, a guy gets too lonely and he gets sick." Now, that line actually, it's also said in Lost. If you remember, I think it's Lost Season 3, Episode 4 or 5. But that line there, when I heard it then, I knew I wanted to read the book because it was just a really good quote, and it was said really well in the story. Pretty much anything that you see Sawyer or any of the characters reading in the TV series Lost that aired about 7 years ago, take a look at it. It's usually very well done. I can't think of any that they were reading that I thought was really terrible. And In the case of Mice and Men, that's the same case. It's well done, it's short. The first time is always the best, though. And that's my review of Mice and Men. I recommend it for people who like John Steinbeck. And if you don't like John Steinbeck, because if you're like me and you found The Grapes of Wrath to be a really slow novel and hard to get into, this novel does not take as long. It's really quick. And it's also shorter, so that makes it even easier. So that's my review. I hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned next month for another book review. Cheerio, and farewell.